I was standing on the graduation stage, hands resting lightly on the podium, waiting for the room to quiet down. The applause before a valedictorian speech is always polite, almost automatic, but I could feel the energy in the auditorium, anticipation mixed with celebration. From where I stood, the lights made the crowd blur into soft shapes, but I knew exactly where my parents were sitting. Front row, center seats, smiling proudly, nodding to relatives, soaking in the moment as if it were proof of their success as parents. And that's when I knew I couldn't let the moment pass in silence. My name is Hannah. I was 22 years old that day, graduating summa cum laude from a state university with a degree in economics. I was the valedictorian of my class and a first-generation college graduate, the first in my family to ever walk across a stage like this. What no one in that room knew, and what my parents had spent years avoiding, was that I paid for every single part of my education myself. Every semester, every textbook, every rent payment, every hidden cost no one mentions when they clap for you at graduation. Meanwhile, my younger sister, Sophie, attended a private university with her tuition fully paid by our parents. Growing up, my family never framed things as unfair. There were no dramatic arguments or explicit comparisons. Instead, everything was wrapped in compliments. I was the strong one, the independent one, the one who could handle pressure. Sophie was sensitive, emotional, in need of extra support. Without ever saying it outright, my parents built a quiet hierarchy of need, and I ended up at the bottom, not because I was less capable, but because I appeared more capable. When college acceptance letters arrived, the difference became impossible to ignore. Sophie got into an expensive private school, and my parents immediately began talking about tuition, housing, and how proud they were of her future. I got into a solid state university with partial scholarships. When I asked how I'd cover the rest, my dad smiled and said, "You'll figure it out. You always do." So I did. From my first semester onward, I worked 3 jobs at once for most of my college career. Early mornings at the campus library, afternoons at the bookstore, late nights at a restaurant where I closed shifts and stumbled home exhausted. I planned my class schedule around work, not the other way around. I studied during breaks, ate meals, standing up, and learned how to survive on very little sleep. I carried a full course load and a quiet ache I didn't yet have words for. At first, I told myself it was fine. I didn't want to be bitter. I didn't want to seem ungrateful. My family had an unspoken rule. Don't rock the boat. Don't talk about money. Don't make anyone uncomfortable. I learned early that silence kept the peace, even when it cost me something. 3 months before graduation, that silence became unbearable. My parents hosted a family dinner, the kind that feels warm and casual until someone says something revealing without realizing it. While passing dishes around the table, my mom announced they were planning a big destination celebration for Sophie's graduation the following year. Flights, a resort, extended family invited. Sophie wasn't even a junior yet, but the excitement was already overflowing. I mentioned carefully that my graduation was coming up soon. "That's nice, honey," my dad said, waving his hand dismissively. "We'll do something simple for you." I swallowed the sting and said nothing. A week later, I overheard my mom on the phone with Sophie while I was folding laundry in the hallway. "Don't stress about student loans," she said warmly. "We'll take care of everything. Just focus on enjoying college." I froze in place, holding a stack of towels, realizing no one had ever offered me that kind of relief. At the time, I was juggling loan payments, rent, and work hours that barely left room to breathe. Then came the moment that finally cracked something open. 2 weeks before graduation, my parents hosted another dinner, this time to announce they had bought Sophie a brand new car as an early graduation gift. Not used, not practical, new, nearly $30,000. My graduation was 5 days away. My aunt turned to me with a smile and asked, "What are your parents getting you, Hannah?" I paused, then said, "Nothing special. I'm just excited to graduate." Sophie looked uncomfortable. She tried to soften it by mentioning a nice dinner reservation my parents had made for me, a dinner I'd been to dozens of times before. That was the moment I finally understood. My achievements weren't celebrated because they were expected. My success wasn't seen as something earned, it was treated as something inevitable. I wasn't rewarded because I was considered self-sufficient. My independence had made me invisible. The night before graduation, my mom pulled me aside and said, "You should be so proud. You did this all on your own." She meant it as praise. I heard it as confirmation. That night, I finalized my valedictorian speech. I had been working on it quietly for weeks, writing and rewriting, practicing in my car between shifts, crying when the weight of it all became too heavy. I wrote 3 versions, one polite and safe, one angry and raw, and one honest. I chose honesty. Graduation morning arrived. My parents looked radiant, telling anyone who would listen how proud they were. Sophie hugged me and said I'd do great. Relatives took photos, assuming my parents had supported both of us equally. My mom whispered, "Keep it light, okay? This is a celebration." I nodded. I didn't argue. I didn't promise. When my name was called, I walked to the podium and took a breath. My hands were shaking, but my voice was steady. I thanked my professors, my friends, the university. Then I looked directly at my parents. I want to thank myself for working 3 jobs while carrying a full course load, for paying for my education semester by semester, and I want to say something directly to my parents. The silence was heavy. Then someone stood, then another. The applause spread through the auditorium like a wave. I stepped down without looking back. After the ceremony, classmates hugged me, strangers thanked me for saying what they'd never been able to say themselves. My parents stayed seated longer than everyone else. Later, my dad told me it was inappropriate. I told him inequality was inappropriate too. My mom cried. They didn't fully apologize, not that day. But something shifted. Weeks later, my mom texted. Conversations followed. Therapy eventually happened after I set firm boundaries. Progress was slow, but it was real. For the first time, I felt seen. Not because they finally understood everything, but because I'd stopped hiding. That speech didn't fix my family overnight, but it fixed something inside me. I learned that silence protects systems, not people. And sometimes telling the truth, especially when it makes others uncomfortable, is the first real act of self-respect.